Hey, this is EOS, and today I'm going to show you how to make a Phaseplant preset for a hi-hat with a groove and a bunch of character. Here's what it sounds like in the song. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to start off by creating a new MIDI channel and then adding an instance of Phaseplant to it. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is add a noise oscillator. It's going to output to channel 1. We're going to use the slope to get the character that we want. Let's go ahead and bring this down by a little bit so I don't deafen you guys. I like it somewhere in there. I don't like it to be too piercing. So in order to make it sound like more like a hi-hat now, let's start with the LFO. I'm going to set this to 8/16, or maybe we'll set it to 16/32. That'll give us a little more room for fine-tuning later. So I'm going to set this to the gain knob and then turn the gain all the way down. And then we're going to turn this to about 75%. And I'm going to go in here, and then I'm going to use, by clicking this pencil right here, you can edit the LFO, and I'm going to make my own. So first thing, set this to unipolar so it only goes one way. Now it's just going to go up from 0. And let's go ahead and set this at -10. Actually, it's still pretty loud. So I'm going to go through and make a little groove by adding points. Maybe this point has a little friend right here. And I'm never going to have it go completely straight up and down like this, because I feel it creates an uncomfortable pop in my ears. So you'll notice that I always have a little bit of a ramp for the attack. And then maybe this last one has another little guy. He's got a little friend right there. Okay, so now we're starting to sound like a hi-hat a little more. We've got a little bit of a groove, and this little double bump at the end makes a really fun sound. Kind of adds like someone's bouncing their stick. And you can do whatever you want here, and then we're going to be able to mix this into our song with a little bit more ability for groove by using this phase knob later. But for now, we'll keep it at 0. Alright, the next thing I'm going to add is a filter. Drag that right underneath the noise oscillator so it's processing everything going to the output. Then I'm going to turn this to steeper slope, and I'm going to use this cue to bring out the I would call it a fundamental in a bass, I guess, but in here we're bringing out the thwack. I don't really enjoy hi-hats. Let's bring up a Pro Q3 so you can really see what I'm talking about. I don't really enjoy what a lot of people would call neutered hi-hats, where you'll see somebody go ahead and just bring the high pass all the way up here, and they lose this. Well, it doesn't sound quite like a hi-hat yet, but they lose the sound of the stick hitting the hi-hat, and it really gets lost in the mix. Maybe I'll leave this up here so we can see what's going on a little bit. We don't really need to see anything below that anyways. Alright, the next thing I'm going to add is a plugin called Stereo. It's not functioning right now. Let's try that again. Alright, we're going to go ahead. Sometimes that'll happen with plugins. I'm just going to make a whole new instance. And then catch us up really quickly. Stereo plugin seems to be broken, but we can do other things to achieve that. I had no stereo information. That was the issue. Well, let's catch up again. Lowered that, brought up the slope, increased my Q, brought that to 0, created an LFO, turned it to unipolar. We created a groove. We'll be a little bit quicker with our groove this time. That one kind of lingered a little bit. Having to redo stuff, sometimes, you know, it's like Bob says, it's a happy accident. Sometimes you come up with something even better the next time. And we'll map this to the gain, about 75%. I really like the random and stereo knobs on the noise. I think it helps give it some good character. You notice I also turned on the global unison to 8 times and turned on the synthetic setting. I'm going to turn down the spread a little bit, and we'll macro all of that later. Maybe turn down the bias. This can give us quite a good range of character as well. So that's, and redoing this LFO is honestly a great thing to do every time. It gives you slightly different groove. You can always toss in an old one, but it's nice to start with something fresh. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that knob to 0, and we'll call this phase, and then I'll map that 100% on the knob, and go ahead and right click and choose 50%. So now we're back at 0 phase right here in the middle. I'm also going to add a transient processor, transient shaper on here, turn the attack all the way up, the sustain all the way down, clip it, and increase the speed a little bit. So now we're really starting to sound like a hi-hat. I'm also going to add a limiter over here on this channel to make sure that I'm not really going to use this to limit. We barely have any dynamics as it is, because it's a really punchy, and the noise fills up the entire spectrum. So what I'm going to do is just watch where it's hitting on this limiter so that I know that I'm not peaking really hard and something that's going to destroy I'm going to end up limiting or compressing out in the track. So I'm pretty happy about that. Then let's go ahead and we're going to add another couple of filters under here. Let's add 2, but turn the second one off. And these are going to be notches. So turn them up to 6. Let's narrow the Q quite a bit. And these are going to be used to add more character. And since it's such a full spectrum noise, and we want to hear this hit to emulate the stick hitting the hi-hat, and we want to hear this crispy top end. But we don't really need all of that characteristic in the middle. So let's pull some of it out, and then we'll attach this to another. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a dual. We're going to do this whole plugin a little bit different than the other one. I'm going to do a dual cutoff and notch knob. And I'm going to attach this to both the cutoff by, let's do 20%. No, yeah, 20%. Don't want to go any higher than that. And we'll move the notch by the same amount to keep the relationship between those together. So now alright, so now this other notch, we're going to place this in a different spot and make it even smaller. And this one will be used just to let's change this one. Let's add that to the same macro knob. Again, I right-click that to bring up this menu, and then I type in 30. And right now, this is at 7. I like the way that sounds. Let's actually change this to -10. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the second filter altogether. Alright, so now that we've done that, the next step is for us to add some more macro knobs. Let's do this one on the bias, Unison bias. Just drag it all the way up from 0. I'm going to also then do Unison spread. And then let's do transient speed. Let's do panning speed. We're going to get a little bit creative with the stereo field, and maybe a ring mod. I love the ring mod in here. Alright, so Unison spread, let's check out what this is at. It's at 14%. I like the way it sounds as a starting sound, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it all the way down, because the detuning will kind of leave it a little bit spread. I'm going to leave the detuning where it is. I'm going to increase the spread there. Then I'm going to right-click this knob and move it back to 14, I think. Maybe it was at 7. I don't know. Actually, we're going to move this just a tiny bit onto the detuning so that, let's do 4%. So as this Unison spread goes up, the detuning goes up slightly. So for transient speed, I'll attach that to this knob. Maybe we'll only go 35%. think I'm gonna... I wish there was more. Actually, there are more. We can also change what the mod wheel goes to. So I'll add the mod wheel to the pumping control. So let's make a note up here. Mod wheel makes transient shorter. I don't want that in my untitled X. Let's save this as do you ever put good or great at the end of the things and they always like suck later? I'll go through and like delete all the other ones I wrote good on. And yeah, ramble. Mod wheel makes transient shorter. All right, let's listen again. I like the way it kind of controls how fast you're using the clutch to make the hi-hats go together or come apart. All right. So we've got some cool stuff going on here. Let's do some panning. I'm going to change this to free mode. Let's move that to 0. This will be panning speed. And then we'll move this to nothing. And then map this to panning right here. So right now it's off. It's not doing anything. Before I forget, I'm going to add this to a couple more things too. The LFO, I like to add just a tiny bit of this to give way more character over the course of the sound, so the hi-hat hits don't sound so static. So I'm going to make them get a little wider as the hit goes. And I'm also going to make them get a little sharper by decreasing the slope here, and I feel like that really helps. Yeah, I like that. We're really starting to sound like a hi-hat. All right, so let's finish up this panning now. So this panning control will open up this LFO that's connected to the panning knob right here. You can see that just by hovering over this panning 100%. You see how that knob glows? All right, so let's turn up the panning speed and watch what happens as it jumps from speaker to speaker. It's almost a disorienting amount of panning. Actually, and if you see here, 50% is actually fully panned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and limit the amount of panning that this can do to 50%. So now the panning knob will operate as 100%. It'll give me more fine-tuning ability between fully panned. Maybe this should be more like 55. There we go. Now I can really see it, know that I'm getting all the way wide. It should be at 50, but I don't... Actually, it is. We're just not seeing it because it's so quick. And this can be used to just generate a small amount of panning movement, or it can be used all the way like that. So I feel that kind of simulates drummer perspective because it makes it feel like the hi-hat's coming from one side and then you're hearing it on the other. But it's still very strong. All right. And this ring mod, let's do that too. I'm going to turn down the frequency and turn the mix off. Let's turn off panning so we can hear what the remod sounds like very well. It's kind of a similar effect, but you get a bouncy little panning phasing thing going on. Can increase the spread as well, or mess with the frequency. A lot of times I'll set this frequency to an actual note in the track. And I do that with as many things as I can that have a frequency knob. I'll pick a note. I think that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. And you like the hi-hat that you made. Until next time.